Dude, they get lethal early? Oh. Oh, there goes Parker too! Wait,
no,
it can't be! This can't be!
No,
this cannot
this is
be!
not right. This ain't right.
This,
guys,
this
this
can't
ain't right.
be! This
ain't
can't
right.
be!
No,
No! London, please! London, please!
Oh,
God Almighty!
Oh, it's over.
Please,
oh, it's so over.
God,
Oh,
London,
London,
no,
oh,
no.
Oh, no.
Oh,
no way.
God.
Look at the difference in mental right now. Vegas are having the time of their lives.
Dude,
London
Vegas
look
are popping. I mean,
done.
Vegas literally, like, their spirits are through the roof. Legitimately getting capped in a better time by Vegas, that's like when Bane broke fucking Batman's back. Like, when he broke Batman's back in the pit, you know? Like, this is like, London are looking lifeless.
So we're just 3 weeks into the Overwatch League, and I might have just seen the worst, yet in some ways, best map of Overwatch I've ever seen. But before we get into the shit show that was the match on King's Row, I want to do a quick little bit of context behind the Spitfire. I also recommend watching my video on Vegas Eternal if you haven't already, just so you can fully grasp how bad these guys are. So, the London Spitfire are certainly a team with a very interesting past to say the least. In 2018, they became Overwatch League champions, but from then on, they've never seen the same level of success that they had. In 2019, despite keeping the same champion winning roster, because of the GOATS meta, the Spitfire only finished in 7th place. Certainly not bad, but certainly taking a step down from 2018. Fast forward to 2020, and the Spitfire do even worse unfortunately. They drop their star players like Prophet, Birdring, Gesture, and Badosin in favour for quite a mediocre roster, finishing in 17th place. And things only get worse. In 2021, their roster was revamped yet again, but the majority of the players were European. Results-wise, this was definitely their worst season, solidifying themselves as a bottom 3 team in the Overwatch League. Still, heading into last year's season in 2022, despite keeping quite a few parts, with the revamped coaching staff and a handful of additions, the Spitfire shocked everyone. Apart from me of course, which I predicted. They finished top 5 in NA and top 8 worldwide, which is pretty similar to their performance in 2019, but even better considering nobody expected them to do this well. Heading into this season however, expectations for the Spitfire remained relatively low. The West became very top heavy as around 7 or 8 teams had star-studded rosters and the Spitfire just kept what they had. Also, considering the meta wasn't trending in London's favour, London were expected to see a drop-off at the start of the season. Since I was a London fanboy, I did predict them quite high, just shy of top 10. Still, that wasn't really an accurate representation for the Spitfire. They got pounded by the Mayhem in the preseason Pro-Am, and have also recently lost to the Uprising and Justice, who were, and arguably still are, pretty middling teams. What's even more worrying, however, was the game against the Vegas Eternal, which, on the surface, looks like there's no issue. It was a 3-0 after all. But, if we delve a little deeper under the surface, we can see that London really struggled in one of the maps, being King's Row. Now for those who don't know, the Eternal are probably top 3 worst Overwatch League teams of all time. And for this game specifically, the Eternal had to put their general manager, Avala, in on support, and Luke Mino, a flex support player, on DPS. So on paper, London should have stomped throughout the entire series, and for 2 maps, they did. However, the worrying part is that they only did it on one composition, their Reinhardt May comp. And the reason why this is so bad for the Spitfire is that this comp only really works against teams as bad as Vegas. And if Spitfire are only good on one composition that isn't even meta, that doesn't really bode well for them against pretty much any OWL team. They certainly aren't beating the one-trick allegations here, which honestly plagued them last season. In other words, if London are struggling when they're not on the Reinhardt comp, then they're basically as good as Vegas when they're not on their comfort picks. And before I proceed to shit on the Spitfire, I made a 40-minute documentary on this entire team and their success last season, and even got an interview with their head coach. You can probably check the view count of this very video, because it's probably going to be higher than what that video got. Anyways, let's get onto the dreaded King's Row map and see what happens. Warning, some of it is just really stupid errors on the Spitfire side. So let me quickly explain how I view this Ramattra Hanzo Kiriko mirror to pan out. In short, the Tracer and Kiriko will predominantly be fighting for flank control. The Hanzo's going to be mainly spamming out the Ramattra, but will also occasionally use a Sonic Arrow to take a flank or a piece of high ground. After this, Ramattra will usually use his Nemesis form, and at that point, the Hanzo and Tracer need to be pressuring either from a flank or from behind. And credit to both London and Eternal, the first bit is what we see here first fight. Landon and Lethal, or the Kiriko and Tracer, are both dueling Avala and Dove, who are also on Kiriko and Tracer, to control the flank. Unfortunately, Sparker just gets headshot here by Lucamino, and there's not too much else to say here. When Sparker comes back, London have actually done a solid job so far in winning parts of the map. Unfortunately, Landon drops off the high ground for some reason, and Lethal is blissfully unaware of Lucamino's Hanzo. In reality, I wish Sparker at least tossed the Sonic down that flank or took some piece of high ground to prevent Lucamino from flanking, but in the first minute of the map, and we've seen both DPS players on the Spitfire make big blunders that shave over a minute off the time bank. Second point attack, London take it slow but do a fairly decent job. Landon and Lethal flank around distracting Lucamino once again, though I think the timing could be a bit better since Hardy takes quite a bit of a pounding. Fortunately, since Dove is the worst Tracer in the league, he has shockingly bad blink management, terrain usage, and panics out a pulse bomb. If I was Dove here, I would just blink back, wait for Vulcan to push in on Ramatra, then I would time my pressure afterwards. Third point is where things get a little confusing. First off, Lethal's micro on Tracer. He actually does a fairly good job of controlling the high ground by using his blink smartly. This means that Landon on the Kiriko can and should teleport to him in order to maintain control, and Sky Reaper on the Baptiste can even use Matrix to maintain that high ground control even more. However, for some reason, Lethal drops off the high ground, wastes a blink, runs into Dove, and because Lethal has no blinks, his recall gets forced. I don't know why he drops here or even wastes a blink. If you're gonna drop here on Tracer, at least do it behind the Eternal and when Hardy is pushing in with his Baptiste window, but if you want to control Dove instead, you have to save your blinks for the 1v1. What's even more confusing though, is that London use Bat Matrix and take zero space. Why? Vegas basically have no ultimates, high ground is so free to take, why isn't Landon and Sparker taking it? Why are 4 of you stacking down main? And then, because you're stacking down main, you're more likely to take a random spam damage, which is exactly what happens as Avala gets a lucky pick off on Landon. Really disappointing them from the Spitfire. Apparently, all of them seem allergic to taking high grounds, despite having At Matrix to zone the space. Maybe I'm missing something here, Sparrow if you're watching, tell me in DMs, I don't know, but on paper, this is really basic map control. Thankfully, next fight, Lethal and Sky Reaper do their due diligence by flushing out Dove on Omega, and Lethal actually takes time to take an angle, which splits attention. Wow, who would have guessed angles split attention, and as a result, he wastes Lucamino's time, and Lethal calmly gets a pulse bomb off. Unfortunately, because Lethal isn't Shaxx, who we don't have anymore on the Spitfire, Lethal overstays his welcome and gets super sloppy and aggressive onto Vulcan. Even worse, London are arranged like a line of headless chickens who once again seem allergic to taking high ground and get their head chopped off by Lucamino Widow. Next fight, Sparker just pops off, so not much to add. As a summary, London make around 4 big blunders on their attack that really hurt their time bank by about 2 minutes, if not more. And on third point specifically, the entire team seem allergic to controlling the high ground, which is super confusing since I've seen this team invest in controlling high ground before. Now turning to the defense, London's first point isn't too bad. Landon does make a dodgy TP and a Suzu, which does mean that London are forced to give up space, whatever. What really loses London this point though, is Lethal's timing on the Tracer. Lethal's in a great position to pressure from behind and split attention, but he does it way too early. In reality, he really should be pressuring when Hardy recontests point with his Nemesis form. As a result, it's easy for Eternal's backline to clear him out, with Avala landing a nice kunai. Just bad timing from Lethal. Second point, it just comes down to micro really, since it's just 2 teams balling out down main with 9 ultimates. I would like to see Landon and Sparker playing high ground once again, but what really seals the deal here is Hardy dying. I think he blocks too late and gets a bit too greedy with his punches unfortunately. Third point is where things get quite messy for London, and I think some of it is down to Lethal. Right here, I would much prefer Lethal to be marking Dove and flushing him out with the help of Landon and Kiriko, while Sparker can fire shots from high ground to zone out the Eternal's backline. Instead, Lethal appears to be heading straight for backline and is once again timing his pressure too early because the Eternal aren't looking at Hadi, they're looking at Lethal. And not to mention, Lethal has once again atrocious cover usage on Tracer and appears to die without using recall. Eternal proceed to cap off this. So, as a summary, Lethal timed this pressure too early both on first and third point, alongside some dodgy positioning from Landon and some dodgy micro from Hardy that causes London to be at a resource deficit. I do want to quickly cover Eternal's second attack here on first point, because there's this massive blunder from Hardy that I just don't understand. Hardy, for some reason, decides to pop Nemesis form super early. The funny thing is, Hardy had said himself in the post-match interview that he doesn't know why the team struggled so much on this map.
With that, walk us through what happened.
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest.
Yet Hardy, you do know, because you just wasted one of the most important cooldowns in your composition. Remember Vulcan's jump on Ilios in my last video? This is the exact equivalent of that, but much less obvious. Because in this case, if Sparker and Lethal were aggressively pressuring, then this Nemesis form would be less of a feed, but they're not pressuring. Hardy's playing aggressive, whilst the entirety of Spitfire are playing passive. And the result? This just means that Vegas can wait and walk in with their cooldowns, and that's exactly what they do. Hardy gets the low HP because he hasn't got Nemesis form and forces Skyripper to lamp early and basically gives Eternal first point for free. Super sloppy. So that's really the video. As I'm speaking right now, London should have a game against the Florida Mayhem, so we'll see how that goes. But overall, some really sloppy mistakes from the side of London, just either getting picked off early, not bothering to contest or control high ground at all, or the DPS from the London Spitfire just timing their pressure far too early. I hope London can bounce back from this, so let me know what you guys think down below. Shout out to my tier 1 Patreons, Remy Kane and Tyler Bishop, and my tier 3 Patreon, Dappy Amen. Until next time.